There we go.
Can you see me now?
We can. Brilliant. I was just saying, George, it's not a proper
Okay.
webinar with me unless there's one or two technical issues. So it's good to have you.
Oh, okay.
Great stuff. So I'm going to kick things off. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for what promises to be an enlightening session on town planning in the UK. I'm Chris, the founder of UK Homes Network, and I'm thrilled to be joined by a distinguished guest today, Councillor George Cowcher. Now, why are we talking about town planning? Well, the importance of effective town planning has never been more crucial. With rapid urbanisation, environmental concerns, and evolving societal needs, our towns and cities are facing unprecedented challenges. The decisions we now make will shape the quality of life for generations to come. Not to mention, we have an election year. So we have in the blue corner the Tories wanting to focus on unlocking more brownfield sites, which many would question how you're going to make those brownfield sites stack for developers. And then in the red corner, you have Labour wanting to unlock the green belt, which I think we can all agree sounds like a bit of a planning nightmare. Fortunately, George is neither in the red or blue corner. So hopefully will give us a bit more of a nuanced understanding of what is really going on. So before we get underway, I just want to tell you a little bit about UK Homes Network. So UK Homes Network is the first social media platform exclusively for the property industry. It's a platform I launched in January together with my brother to create better cohesion across the property industry, to network more effectively and unlock new business opportunities. And this is all without the fear of your posts and content flopping on conventional social media platforms because of algorithmic interference or the constant bombardment of AI generated spam messages that I think we all experience on a daily basis. You can all sign up to UK Homes Network for free, so please go to the App Store and download it by searching UK Homes Network. You'll be able to start promoting your business and your personal brand straight away and hopefully unlock new opportunities together. So now I've got the timeshare bit out of the way. So let's kick things off. George and myself met a few weeks ago at an event in Warwickshire, which was centred around supporting local businesses within the region. And George gave an insight into the region and his background working not just as a councillor, but also his experience as a town planner. I know it's one of the most requested subjects that we've had from our membership. So I was really excited when George agreed to share some of his experience with us. So George, first of all, how are you?
I'm good. I've just come from a rather heavy transport meeting, so this is quite nice to talk about things more generally.
Great stuff. Would you mind just giving us a bit of an introduction as to who you are and maybe give us an insight into the wealth of experience that you have in regards to town planning?
Yes, sure. I have to say that what I'm saying this morning is my own personal views, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the council or any other body. But yes, I am a chartered town planner, been a planner for 40 odd years. Started off in local government, but have really spent most of my career dealing with economic development and particularly bringing inward investment into the UK. A lot of work with the regional development agencies, both in the southwest and the northeast, and latterly working with the business community in the East Midlands and in Devon. Now, since last May, I was elected to Stratford-on-Avon District Council, and I am the portfolio holder for planning and economic development in one of the fastest growing districts in the whole of the UK.
Great. So thanks, George. Really appreciate that. So given your extensive experience, what major changes have you witnessed in the planning system over the course of your career? And how have these sort of changes impacted local communities?
So when I started, and certainly when I was at university, and it's very disappointing to see some of the things that we were told we should be building back in the 1970s now being demolished, but that shows how things change. In terms of planning, originally the planning system had a system of providing strategic plans, very often called structure plans, which were either done on a county basis or on a regional basis, and then the local plans were dealt with locally. What we've seen, frankly, over the last 10 years is the strategic stuff has all really gone upstairs into government. So we get national planning policy guidance from government, and then we down in local areas have to produce local plans. So our ability, frankly, to involve local people and take on views, local views are very much challenged by what government is dictating. So on housing numbers, on how much land we have to allocate for industrial development, much of that has to come from government. And if we try to do something very different, we're now in a much more litigious society. So the development industry have realised that, frankly, if they pay expensive lawyers, they can challenge a lot of these plans and push their proposals through. And that has made it even more undemocratic going forward. And that, I think, is one of our major challenges for the future.
Okay, interesting. So obviously with the sort of changes in government, national government taking a sort of more of a role on strategic planning, you've been sort of experienced enough to work in various regions across the UK. Are there sort of similarities or difference that you've noticed in the approach to planning and economic development?
Well, I've worked in the northeast, which is probably the poorest and most deprived region, and I worked closely up there at the time when Tony Blair was Prime Minister, and when the region, frankly, was on its knees economically. There was, I think, in that region, much greater harmony, much greater working together to make sure that we had a single voice going forward. I saw that to some degree also in the East Midlands, where we were very keen to try and get regional cohesion and to make sure that not all attention was flying over the top of us from London up to the north, that actually the Midlands got there. My last major assignment was down in the southwest, which was I think, dispiriting arrangement there, because there is no sense of region, no sense of cohesion, a lot of moaning that nothing ever happens. But frankly, there is not a single voice that comes out of it. So Cornwall thinks it's a separate country. Devon won't talk to Cornwall, and other counties won't there. And that, frankly, is just a recipe for disaster. And that's one of the reasons why that region, I think, has had less attention than other regions are having.
I can vouch for that. My dad's Cornish, and he's always talking about the Cornish Liberation Front. So, which sounds a bit more Monty Python than it does sort of real life.
Yes, but it doesn't help if you're looking for attention. I mean, at least when we were in the EU, Cornwall had Objective 1 status, and therefore got substantive money associated with that. Now, Cornwall has to see itself very much in the context of how the Southwest is viewed.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's been a sort of an emergence over the last few years of sort of new technologies and definitely changing societal needs. How do you see the role of town planning evolving in the coming years? What does the future look like?
Well, I think the pressure on us gets greater every single year. I mean, our biggest pressure, frankly, is climate change. And our need to move to zero carbon. That has major implications for what we build and where we build it and how we organise things. And we seem to get very mixed messages from government. One minute it's a priority, then frankly it's not much of a priority. When we get local initiatives in terms of trying to deal with traffic, then all of a sudden we get an edict from government saying you can't do that. House builders who frankly ought to be building every single new house now to a zero carbon standard are still putting gas boilers in houses, which will have to be retrofitted in the next few years. Frankly, it's crazy what we're kind of doing at the moment. The complete lack of planning, the complete lack of foresight, I think, going forward. I think you're also seeing, I think, particularly, and I'm very much in a shire district at the moment, enormous concerns about dictation from London, and that we can't even get on and sort out our own flooding problems and our own other issues as well. So I think all of this means that the planning system will need to change, but it needs to change in a very positive partnership with government at other levels, and that's not what we have at the moment.
Interesting. And is there some examples of sort of successful initiatives or projects that you've been involved recently that have had a positive impact on local communities?
Well, I have been involved with a number of economic development developments, which clearly creates new wealth, creates new jobs. I mean, I started really very early on in my career. One of my biggest successes was bringing Honda to Swindon. Then actually now dismantling the factory, but actually at that time, Swindon's rail industry was in great contraction, and there was a great opportunity there for a car making company to come in and produce it there. So that was a success, but that's highly historic. You're only really as successful as your last one. At the moment, one of my major big projects is how are we dealing with the high street? High street in so many of our towns suffering from out of town, and also purchasing online means that shops become ever more uneconomic. We still are charging for parking in town centres, yet in out of town it's free. So all the dynamics are not working there, and we have a major thing. So I've just come from a meeting where I'm hoping to get part of the centre of Stratford-on-Avon pedestrianised, which I think will change the whole image of the town, which is dominated by cars, still in the same way as it was in the 1940s, 50s and 60s.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Stratford not last weekend, the weekend before, and trying to cross the road in front of Marks and Spencer's and what have you. So yeah, putting more pedestrian zones in would definitely benefit not just the locals but the tourists, I think. So yeah, that sounds like a great initiative. So guys, just a call out to our audience. If you've got any questions for George or for myself, please do feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll obviously get to those in a second. So if you've got any questions, please let us know, and you can put those in the chat. So how do you see the balance for the economic development with preserving the cultural and historical heritage of a town like Stratford-upon-Avon?
Well, I mean, our economic future is determined by that. If we destroy the historic and environmental attractiveness of our area, then frankly we don't have a tourism and hospitality business, and that's probably one of our largest employers and our largest economic strands in the area. I mean, I think it is very, very important that we put the environment first, both in terms of what I've already said in relation to climate change, and a town like Stratford and so many parts of the UK affected by the threat of flooding in particular, which is a very serious threat to our built environment. So really making sure that there. But yes, we have a terrific cultural heritage in the UK. We've not always treated it very well. I suppose I started my career where we're still putting urban motorways right the way through historic towns, which was not the best way of preserving our culture. So we have to have a partnership arrangement. We have to make sure that happens. I'm very keen in my part of rural Warwickshire that we don't cover what is very good countryside with just warehouses, because frankly that just degrades what we've got. We've got an area of outstanding natural beauty to the south of us, with Cotswolds, and we have Greenbelt to the north of us, and it seems that very often there is a view that this is white land and we can just cover it in sheds. Well, actually that actually doesn't achieve anything. It produces low quality employment, and it doesn't actually do anything, frankly, for our economic future. So that's not a way that we want to go, particularly in our area.
Yeah, no, I can second that. I mean, I grew up in Nuneaton, and that stretch of the A5 right down from Leicestershire up to Staffordshire, Tamworth, is now, you know, when I was growing up,
Yeah,
it was fields.
we're happy, keep it over there, but we really don't want that. And the M40 corridor is something different, and we do not want to cover all along the side of it. We're under great pressure at the moment by various organisations who do want to develop out our land, but we do want to try and preserve our countryside if we possibly can.
Well, yeah, I think in the case of Nuneaton and sort of going further up towards Tamworth, it's a case of that a lot of the sites have been used to put that warehousing on that you're talking about, and residential traffic is one thing, but when you've got lorries that are all trying to go up a single A road, you know, to get onto the M69 or to the M42, it's an absolute nightmare down there. So yeah, I can definitely say that I've experienced that. And given your sort of political background, how do you sort of navigate the intersection between politics and town planning, especially in terms of decision making and policy implementation?
Well, I'm a Liberal Democrat, which I haven't declared yet to date, and we took control of Stratford-on-Avon District Council last May, largely, I think, because of the failure of planning, and frankly, the way in which the Conservatives, all they want to do is build houses and forget that actually, if you build loads of houses, you've got to put the infrastructure in. There's no point in building houses if, frankly, you've got no schools, you've got fewer hospital beds as we have in our area than we had 10 years ago, and frankly, you've built no roads or looked at the transport infrastructure at all. So I think politics are important. It's about choices. My view is that we really ought to be doing planning and development from the ground up, from the grassroots up. What it is we need to meet the needs of local people, that should be our primary consideration. Rather than some form of political agenda set by London to say this is what you have to do, and set from that point of view. So politics is all about choices, and we have a number of choices at the moment. I believe that the Liberal Democrat way is the way forward because I think we are very community based. London, I think, have failed, frankly, in what they've done, certainly over the last 10 years. I am rather worried about announcements from the Labour Party that we're maybe just going down the route of deregulation. Let's just build everywhere, build loads of houses without really thinking about what we've talked about in relation to the environment, about building communities, which are much more important. So I am sure this is going to be a major issue that's going to come up in the general election, whenever that's held later on in the year.
Great. And George, just on a sort of side note, I mean, we spoke at the event in Stratford. You know, I think you're quite an advocate of modular homes and MMC. Is that something that you're quite positive about?
We have got to find a way in which we can build low-cost housing. The term affordable housing is used endlessly, but actually we have got supposedly affordable houses in Stratford-on-Avon District which are valued at £400,000. Well, they're not affordable. We need low-cost housing of mixed tenure, both for rent and for sale, so that we can provide housing for the workers that we need, and also for young people who are starting out. And so I think that's one of our major challenges about how do we find low cost and how do we develop low cost housing. Technology has a place to play in that. Frankly, how we reward landowners has a major place to play in this at the moment, because as soon as we allocate a piece of land for housing, all of a sudden it goes from being worth about £5,000 an acre to £500,000 an acre plus. And frankly, that's one of the major problems that we've got, and it's one of the reasons why I think there is a sclerosis in the system.
Right. And I had a nice comment from Kimberly Jade there saying, totally agree with the lack of consideration towards local infrastructure to support development, e.g. schools, GPs, utilities, etc. What I'll do is just ask one final question, and then we'll get into the chat and ask a few questions from our audience. So if you've got any questions for George, please submit them. Final question, George, is what advice would you give for aspiring town planners or individuals interested in pursuing a career in planning and economic development?
Go for it. We need you. I do think the planning profession is undervalued. I think it's been regarded as being, oh, it's just about regulation, it's about regulators, it's difficult, and it has not been given the priority it needs. We need good people to come up with the imaginative and realistic solutions to our key problems. At the moment, we have a shortage of planners. They are difficult to recruit. Hopefully, that will actually push up their value a bit. We'll have to pay them a bit more, so we actually can get more people into the system. But qualified planners, it's a very, very interesting career. I've thoroughly enjoyed my 40 years working locally, nationally, and indeed internationally, and it's been very, very rewarding indeed. Things never stay the same. We're always on a continuum, but I would recommend it to anybody who's interested in the environment, interested in where we live, interested in how we live, because sometimes it's easy to do the physical development. It's the organizational development that also is really important, both from a social point of view, but also where I've worked very much in the economic point of view. How do we make it work economically so that we do create the facilities that we require?
Great. So yeah, we're going to jump into the chat there. Nikki's asked a quite interesting question. I know we were sort of touching on sustainability and sort of the green side of economic development. What's your thoughts on larger electric car charging services inside towns and cities to cope with the future of electric cars? For example, visitors and residents with no EV charging points.
Well, I think this is the whole reason why I think in some respects our move over to electric vehicles is stalling a bit, frankly, because there is that fear factor of where can I get it charged? And I think we've got to see much stronger leadership from government in terms of physically providing spaces as has been suggested there, but also ensuring that the technology works. Because I've heard horror stories of people traveling down motorways and finding that everything's out of commission, or indeed the absolutely ridiculous thing where you've got have to have about half a dozen apps on your phone so that you actually can pay for the electricity in the first place. Frankly, this is just madness, and it means that I'm sure for many people they're just put off the whole prospect of doing it because it is just too difficult and not desirable. But electric moving is the way for the future, and we've got to facilitate that.
Absolutely, and I'd just like to second that, because I think that national government need to put a bit more of an emphasis on the actual infrastructure that goes into it. Because I was speaking to someone who works for a fast food company based down in the southwest, and they were building a new drive-through complex for their fast food, and the local council were told that in order for this to be approved, that they needed to have 4 EV charging points. Unfortunately, the headroom at the capacity at the local substation meant that it would barely charge 1. And the developer went back to the local council and said, we can't put 4 because it would basically be like plugging in your iPhone to each car. And the local council said, sorry, but no, that's the requirements for this development. So certainly there needs to be a little bit more of a focus from government on the headroom capacity at the local substations.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we have real problems in relation to distribution of electricity, which is why there needs to be reinforcement of the grid all over the place. But it is a very substantial capital cost. But this is the kind of infrastructure that we've got to do. It's exactly the same where we've got with drainage. So at the moment we have outmoded drainage systems whereby the water companies can just put raw sewage into our rivers, and the quality of our rivers go down as well. So unless we actually invest in the infrastructure, frankly, we're not going to get very far. And we need government. This is where the new government coming in is going to have to lead on all of this, because at the moment we see very little leadership.
Great. Thanks for that insight, George. And we've got another question here from Brittany. One of the biggest challenges to development is the local resident perception. What can the council do to support developers in changing the dialogue of development term from contentious to positive? They often don't understand the S106 is enforced to benefit the surrounding area, not hinder it.
Developers have got a lot more to do, frankly. I mean, the track record of nearly every development we have in our district is the developers never finish it off. I've just had landscaping cleared off an area. They've sent up management companies looking after estates. Frankly, the experience that local people have had from developers is absolutely shocking. And I think until the development industry actually falls up its socks and starts to actually work in partnership with local communities, we're not going to get very far. I want to see a much harder regulatory system. I believe that, frankly, no development site should open up until the developers put in a very substantial financial bond in, which is held to ensure that development is completed to the satisfaction. We've also had a situation that I've uncovered here that we don't always enforce 106 agreements, and therefore the district council, the county council actually lose the money. I'm putting in a system here whereby we want to see that money paid up front almost before any development takes place. At the moment, we've got a situation where you can build 300, 500, 700 houses before a new road is put in. Well, frankly, that just causes chaos. So until we get this sequencing correctly and the proper financing of development, I think we're going to have a real problem. And it's why, frankly, local people are absolutely fed up. And it's why a political earthquake took place in this area last May, and I think a political earthquake will take place at the general election. And any government that doesn't start to actually control the development industry, frankly, is on a loser. We all know that house builders currently fund the Tory party, and that's a major problem.
Wow. Well, there you go. I hope that answers your question, Brittany. We'll just give it a couple of seconds to see if there's any sort of follow-up questions. But I just want to say, George, thanks very much for joining us today. Apologies for the technical issues at the start. If you want to sign up for UK Homes Network, I'll put the link in the chat where you can create an account on the web-based version, or alternatively, if you want to go to the app stores and download UK Homes Network, you can create an account straight away through Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, and you'll be able to watch the recording back of this webinar. So yeah, I think if there's no more questions, thank you very much for your time, George. Thank you very much to the audience for getting involved and obviously asking some quite interesting questions there. George, where can people find you if they want to sort of reach out and carry on the conversation? So
if they want to contact me, the best email address I can give out is George_Cowcher, that's spelled COWCHER, @yahoo.co.uk.
Right, I'm just going to put that in the chat for everyone. So our next webinar session is on the 25th of April. We'll be talking about the mental health and wellbeing crisis within the property industry. Why is it that 1 in 3 property industry professionals have reported to have a mental health issue? I'll be joined by Alison Snee, who has worked in the built environment for 15 years, but retrained as a psychotherapist and hypnotherapist. And I'll also be joined by Chris Howe from Your Results Coach, who's a business coach and wellbeing mentor. So the link will be available for that in the UK Homes Network platform. So if you can subscribe to that, that would be great. That's all from me. So wish you all a brilliant afternoon, and thanks again to our guest, George.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.